Travis Bennett's coffee mug trembled as Carolyn Holloway, the billionaire CEO whose pipes he'd fixed 12 hours ago, stood at his apartment door with a designer suitcase, her voice cracking. "I hope there's room." Behind him, 7-year-old Owen peeked out in dinosaur pajamas, watching the woman in a $1,000 coat, standing in their hallway that reek of mold and broken dreams. Just last night, exhausted and covered in pipe grease, Travis had joked to this stranger crying in her empty penthouse. "If you're tired of all this space, move in with me." He'd meant nothing by it. A throwaway line from a single dad who made bad jokes to fill silence. But here she was, mascara still smudged, clutching that suitcase like a lifeline. The neighbors' doors were already cracking open. Whisper starting. What happens when a joke becomes someone's last hope? And what did she mean when she whispered, "You don't know what you've just saved me from"? The Friday night before had started like every other Friday in Travis Bennett's life, a carefully choreographed dance of survival that he'd perfected over 3 years. At 38, he lived in a 2-bedroom apartment in Southtown, the kind of building where the elevator worked 3 days out of 7. The heating clanged like a ghost in chains, and the hallway perpetually smelled of Mrs. Rodriguez's cabbage soup, mixed with something that might have been mold, or might have been hope dying slowly. He juggled 3 jobs with the precision of a circus performer, who couldn't afford to drop a single ball. Plumbing during weekdays, bartending at Murphy's Tavern on Friday nights, and cleaning offices in the financial district every Sunday morning before Owen woke up. Owen was 7 now, in 2nd grade at Jefferson Elementary, smart enough to skip a grade, but Travis couldn't afford the advanced program fees. The boy had his mother's delicate features and his father's stubborn optimism, though lately he'd been asking questions that carved pieces from Travis's heart. "Dad, why don't we have a house like Charlie Morrison's?" He'd asked 2 nights ago, his brown eyes wide with the innocent curiosity that hadn't yet learned some questions hard to answer. Charlie lived 3 blocks over in a townhouse with a backyard, a swing set, and parents who didn't have to choose between groceries and field trip fees. Travis had been on the living room floor, carefully applying duct tape to Owen's sneakers for the 3rd time. That month, the soul gaping open like a mouth, trying to speak uncomfortable truths about their situation. Because, Travis had said with his practiced grin, the one that fooled everyone but himself. Shoes with special dad repairs run faster than 3 pairs of new ones. It's pure science, buddy. The duct tape makes them aerodynamic like race cars. Owen had laughed. That pure crystalline sound that made every sacrifice worthwhile, and Travis had ruffled his sandy hair, pushing down the familiar ache that came with lying to protect innocence. But later that night, after Owen fell asleep clutching Mr. Peanuts, the stuffed elephant that was Catherine's last gift, Travis sat at their scratched kitchen table, staring at bills spread like tarot cards, predicting disaster. Electric bill 60 days past due. Final notice printed in aggressive red. Rent due in 5 days, $1,200. He didn't have 3 text messages from Mrs. Parker, their landlord, each progressively less patient. The last one containing the word eviction like a loaded gun. The bartending shift would bring maybe $150 in tips if he was lucky, but it wouldn't be enough. It was never enough. The refrigerator hummed its death rattle. The compressor struggling like Travis himself, working too hard for too long. On the counter, Owen's permission slip for the Science Museum field trip lay unsigned. $20 that might as well have been $20,000. Travis didn't cry anymore. He'd used up that luxury 3 years ago when Catherine's heart monitor flatlined after the drunk driver's impact. Instead, he sat in the darkness, the only light coming from the street lamp outside, filtering through windows he couldn't afford to replace, and whispered his nightly prayer to a universe that seemed to have gone deaf. Just 1 more month. Give me 1 more month to figure this out. He thought about Catherine then, how she'd always found solutions where he saw only walls. How she'd say, "We're a team, Trav," usually while they tackled something impossible, like assembling Owen's crib. With missing instructions or stretching $20 into a week of meals. But teams needed all their players, and he'd been playing alone for 1,095 days. Not that he was counting. Friday night at Murphy's Tavern was controlled chaos, the kind Travis had learned to navigate with his eyes closed. He dropped Owen at Mrs. People in Henderson's apartment 2 doors down. She watched him for free because that's what neighbors do for each other. Though Travis fixed her leaky faucets and carried her groceries up 2 flights of stairs whenever he could, payment and kind for kindness. The bar was packed with financial district workers celebrating their survival of another corporate week. Their $100 ties loosened, their laughter pitched too high with alcohol and false freedom. Travis moved efficiently behind the bar, muscle memory guiding his hands while his mind ran calculations. If he picked up 2 extra cleaning shifts, if the Johnson plumbing job came through, if the universe would finally cut him just one break. At 9:17 p.m., he remembered the exact time because the ancient Budweiser clock above the bar had just flickered. His phone buzzed. Normally, he'd ignore it during a shift, but the caller ID showed DeMarco's emergency plumbing. And Sal DeMarco only called when he had overflow work that paid cash. Travis got an emergency. Burst pipe in a penthouse at Holloway Tower. $300 cash if you can handle it now. Travis didn't hesitate, gesturing to Murphy, who nodded understanding. Everyone knew Travis's situation, though. They pretended not to out of respect. $300 meant electricity wouldn't be cut off. Meant Owen could go on that field trip. Meant breathing room for exactly 1 more week. Holloway Tower rose 28 floors into the night sky. All gleaming glass and steel that reflected the city lights like a giant middle finger to poverty. Travis parked his van. Bennett Plumbing barely visible through peeling paint between a Mercedes S-Class and a Tesla that cost more than he'd make in 5 years. The security guard, a heavy-set man whose name tag read Eugene, looked at Travis's worn work clothes with the familiar mixture of disdain and pity that service workers knew too well. Penthouse, Eugene said after checking the work order, his tone suggesting Travis better not steal anything. Private elevator, don't drip on anything expensive. Travis wanted to say everything in this building was expensive, but he just nodded, shouldering his tool bag. The elevator was larger than Owen's bedroom with mirrors on 3 sides that multiplied his exhaustion into infinity. 28 floors up felt like ascending to another planet. One where people worried about stock portfolios instead of past due notices. When the doors opened directly into the penthouse, Travis had to consciously keep his mouth closed. The space was massive, probably 3,000 square feet of marble and chrome and glass with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a view that made the city look like jewelry scattered on black velvet. Everything was white. White leather, white walls, white marble, like someone had been afraid of color contaminating their life. Standing at those windows, her back to him, was a woman in a gray Armani suit, her dark hair in a bun that was slowly unraveling like her composure. The pipes in the corner, she said without turning, her voice with what sounded like hours of crying. I won't be in your way. Travis found the problem quickly. A compression fitting had failed behind a credenza that probably cost more than his annual rent. Water had pooled on marble floors that had never known a spill before this moment. He worked in silence for 30 minutes, the only sounds his tools clinking and the woman's occasional shuddering breath from across the room. When he finished, Travis stood, wiping his hands on his workcloth, and really looked at the space. It was magnificent and terrible, like a museum after closing, beautiful, but devoid of life. No photographs, no books with cracked spines, no coffee rings on tables, no evidence that humans actually lived here. Nice place, he said, because the silence was becoming oppressive, but it looks lonely. The woman, Carolyn Holloway, he'd later learn, turned to face him for the first time. Carolyn's mascara had run in black rivers down her cheeks, her carefully constructed corporate armor cracked and leaking. You're right, she said simply. It's the loneliest place on earth. My husband left last week, said I'd married my company instead of him. 15 years of marriage reduced to a forwarding address and a lawyer's business card. Something in her voice, the way it broke on 15 years, made Travis sit on the spotless white sofa, ignoring how out of place his work clothes looked against the pristine leather. They talked until nearly midnight about loss, his wife, her marriage, about children, his own, the kids she never had time for, about the different ways life could empty you out. I've built an empire, Carolyn said, staring at her hands. Sold thousands of homes to thousands of families. I know the square footage of happiness. Apparently, it's 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, and a finished basement. But I go home to 3,000 square feet of nothing. Travis told her about Catherine, about the drunk driver who'd stolen their future in 7 seconds of twisted metal, about raising Owen alone while juggling jobs like a desperate circus act. But you smile, she observed. And he'd replied, if I don't smile, how will Owen know the world's